The season is over. Conference championship week is here. It's all over with. We ended. Boo. The season's over,
The
man. It
Gator
went by too
season's over.
fast. Oh, yeah. It is definitely over. It was
Yeah,
over like 5 weeks ago. I don't know what you're talking about.
but it's like over.
It definitely is. And I'm kind of glad because it was pretty ugly and annoying, ever since
Yeah.
that South Carolina road win, man. It's really all I can
Yep.
hang my hat on. And
Yep.
it's been pretty shitty the last 5.5 weeks. I mean, like
Yeah.
I said, the best game of the year was last week against Missouri, really, or the week 2 weeks ago. Like, screw the Tennessee game. It was that Missouri game was the best one. But anyway,
Yeah.
well,
Rivalry week.
rivalry week was pretty good. It was here's the crazy part about this season, man. Still 14 weeks, and we've had really no major upsets, no major not a lot of chaos. Will we have that this week? I mean, it really wouldn't be chaotic. The only chaotic thing would be if Bama were to beat Georgia,
But it's not
because
really
everybody else.
trending. It's like you said. I mean, with this whole season, it's not trending in that direction to happen. Like everyone's
Yeah,
taking care of business. I mean, don't get me wrong. This past weekend was great with rivalry games and close games, and you thought a couple things could happen, but at the end of the day, chalk.
yeah. No,
The,
it's
the
been that
big
way
boys took
all
care of business.
year, and
Hmm.
now you can just obviously get some good matchups this weekend where some things could happen and it could be a little chaotic. And on this week, there's a little bit more even playing field in some of those games. Obviously, we're going to get the rematch in the
Yeah.
Pac-12 game, get Bama, Georgia, and the SEC game. But then, really, after that, it's just I think Michigan has an easy game, and then the interesting one is the team we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But we'll before we talk about LSU, FSU, ACC championship game, we'll go ahead and talk about your Canes, who played Friday at noon, and they opened up the bag of tricks, and they pretty much handled business like we kind of thought they would. Would they blow them out? Was the question we had. Is like, how are they going to
Hmm.
get up for an early kick road game against BC, one of those like scrappy teams? And yeah, they lit them up for 45 points, and the Canes look pretty good.
Yeah, this is the Canes team everyone I think was waiting on to see this season after those first 5 games. And the Achilles heel for the Canes the last couple of years is fading at the end of the season. BC's beaten Miami the last 3 or 4 times they've played, which is when I saw that I was like, can't believe that, but it's believable when you think about the Canes the last 10 seasons. They came out, BC had a great drive, opening drive, scripted drive, like we love to talk about. Got down the field, made it 7-0. And then the Canes came out and the offense looked pretty good. What was surprising to me is I texted you guys like, where the hell has this play calling been all year? There was 5 passes to the tight end and I think 2 passes to the backs just on the first drive alone.
Yeah,
They had a couple double reverse passes, orbit route, not an orbit route, but a motion touchdown to Jacoby George, which I didn't know until really watching the game that George and Brashard Smith were suspended for the first quarter because of their personal fouls against Louisville. But for the most part, like I say, the Canes came out, scored on 4 of their first 5 drives, took care of business in Chestnut Hill. We joked about the weather being a problem, because they hate going up there at the end of the year. But they handled business. Henry Parrish had a good day, 111 yards, 2 TDs. TBD looked efficient, the non-Miami quarterback anymore after that game.
yep. He's
But
not your quarterback
yeah,
anymore.
the defense did what they were supposed to do. Kiko Alonso was flying all over the place. He was balling, man. He hopefully he comes back. I know he has one more year. But we know in this day and age, transfer portal opportunities, the league, all of that's kind of enticing. But overall, just to rehash the season real quick, it record-wise wasn't where Canes fans wanted it to be. But when you watch the games and you watch it on the field, you see a difference from last year and the year before. And hopefully they continue to grow. He gets the right people in there. Now we're sitting at defection season. Who leaves, who
Yeah,
stays, and all of that. But overall, as a Canes fan, it's a double-edged sword. You're kind of disappointed. You're kind of happy because you saw what they did against Boston College, and you're like, this is what it could have been. only critique I have of that game, that I don't think what they did Friday is a realistic way of playing football all season long, having 12 and 13 play drives for 8 minutes. Like, that's not college football today. And I think that's how
No.
Mario wants to play. And you're going to lose games if you're trying to do that. You're going to get behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, you definitely can't. Those longer drives like that, it's basically, what happens when you're doing that and expecting to go on long drives is, your margin for error,
Hmm.
becomes drastically, more probable to make mistakes than, to continue to make long sustained drives. It just doesn't, like, now, don't get me wrong. Like, some of these teams need to be able to do both. You got to have
Yeah.
the big play ability. You got to have the explosive plays. That kind of set you up for a shorter drive chart, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't go on these like 10
No.
play, 12, 15 play drives anymore. I mean, it's good to have one of those in your game for sure. That means you're able to run the ball a little bit. You're able to mix it up, but yeah, it's just you got to be explosive. You got to be able to hit the big play. You got to be able to score on the the one or two play, the long play. And that's kind of where it's going. So it'll be interesting
Hmm.
to see, like you said, what happens with who's going, who's staying, all that stuff. Obviously, we just talked about Van Dyke's gone, so he's out of the picture. And he was good early, then he was bad, then he was decent, then now he's out of here. So now it's all on
Yeah.
Emory Williams next year. What's he going to do? How's he going to go into year two
Well, I think
of his
they're
development?
yeah. Well, rumor has it they're
No,
going to go after a veteran quarterback.
yeah, I mean, shit. There's
Ja'Cory
already
Brown.
20.
It was announced. Yeah, it was announced today that Ja'Cory Brown is going to be the starter in the bowl game as of today. I mean, anything could change between now and then. I think he's probably looking at it as he probably wants to transfer, but at the end of the day, he didn't play this whole year, and then last year wasn't the greatest. Probably wants to get some film, and the bowl game is going to be relatively early, still in that transfer portal area. But I mean, now, I mean, since we're doing the pod, whatever. Um, both safeties are looking like they're gone. Cam Kitchens for sure. James Williams, they say he's still undecided. James going to the league, both entering the draft. Don Chaney's gone. Jahari Fari, well, however you say his name, is gone. Defensive end. Corey Flagg, which is surprising, starting linebacker leaving. Um, so, and there's going to be more guys, and that's going to be every team we talk about. There are going to be guys leaving the transfer portal. You just hope that you keep your Fletchers of the world and the Francisco Mauanoa, the right tackle, the building blocks. You hope those guys stay, and then you just go from there.
Yeah, no, trust. Like, there's plenty of already veteran quarterbacks that are already in the portal
Mm-hmm.
now. So there's going to be more as we continue to go. So, teams who are losing those like senior guys and don't want to rely on a freshman that you already have or an incoming guy, you can go get one of these guys who at least has a little bit of proven, play, and see where, like, Will Rogers from Mississippi State, like, where's he going to go? Obviously, Cam Ward out of
Well, Howard,
Wazoo.
yeah,
Yeah, or like say K-State's quarterback, so there's plenty of guys where those names are going to increase. Yeah, the portal opens on
yeah,
Monday and then it doesn't close until January. So it's going to
mm-hmm.
be a long section
Chaos,
of like waiting and
dude. It's
seeing
gonna
who's
be
going in.
chaos.
Yeah, and then you got, early signing day, I think is in about 20 days. I think it's like
Yeah,
December
3 weeks.
15th or something like that. So it's, you're trying to keep the classes that you got intact. So uh, what's funny is I was talking to Haiti last night, and I was telling her that ETN was looking like he's going to leave, and I knew it 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we were like, "What can you blame the guy?" And then Haiti's she's not an avid college football watcher, but she pays attention to what's going on. And she's like, "Damn," she's like, there's like no loyalty in college football, and I was like, yeah, it's totally changed now. You don't just basically, you wait your time in high school to pick your college and, you sign on that dotted line and be like, I'm in for this for 4 to 5 years, and yeah, things don't
But
work
you
out
don't. I don't.
sometimes, but now there's like zero, like these kids don't give a damn about the A on the hat, the U on the helmet. Like, it's all about opportunity, and you don't
But
get
I think
what sucks is
it's.
you lose that camaraderie and brotherhood and
Mm-hmm.
like
Oh
loyalty of
yeah,
the
for sure.
program, and it's it's definitely changed, and it's just changed in the last 5 to 10 years,
I
even
blame the
less.
adults in the room, though.
Yeah, no, for
The
sure.
adults allowed it to happen because the NCAA and these conferences could have stepped in and said, you know what, we need to put parameters around portal, NIL, and all of that. But they let it become the Wild Wild West, and I can't blame the kids. Is it frustrating to see 10, 15 guys from your team leave, and you're like guys that are starters like an ETN, like I say, Tyler Van Dyke, or Will Howard at Kansas State, when you're those type of guys, but at the same time, you can't blame them. Karen Ward, when they're reporting that $1 million bags being thrown at them,
Mm-hmm.
it's a double-edged sword. As a fan, yeah, you're not happy to see it, but as a kid, we live in America where they tell you to be a capitalist. As soon as you're 18, you could go out and get a job and do whatever. You don't have to go to school. So at the same time, these kids have opportunities they could take care of their families and their situations and set themselves up for life. It's like I said, I blame the adults. The kids are just
Yeah,
going to be
no, I
kids
mean,
and do what they
it
want to
took
do.
it took too long for it to
Mm-hmm.
happen, and then when it happened, it just basically Pandora's box opened up, and it became
Yeah. Yeah.
just a major issue. And here's the thing: people talk about the transfer portal and NIL is ruining college football. Here's where it is. It's not ruining it as the product because people are still watching it at a high rate.
Yeah.
People consuming the game on TV and going to games
Mm-hmm.
has been as high as it's ever been. So that ain't changing it. It's just the days of us remembering what we used to watch, 10, 15, 20 years ago, even when we were kids, it's completely
Yeah.
changed in that nature and aspect. So it's literally now a year round, hell, re-recruiting your recruiting class, like
Yeah.
for you
Not
to
just
have
your
to
recruiting class,
literally,
your guys on your team.
no, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean. You got to re-recruit your class that you signed 2
Yeah.
years ago. You got to re-recruit
Yeah.
them. You got
Mm-hmm.
to re-recruit Trevor Etienne to stay at your school, where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, we got him. He's here. You got like, Will Norman, a big defensive lineman, freshman, 4-star kid out of Jersey, went to IMG. We finally got an IMG guy. I really liked Will Norman. He just didn't get on the field this year. Well, guess what? He's in the freaking portal. He's gone. So it's like, damn, like this kid, like he didn't even play this year, and he's a true freshman. So it's like, you're like, do you see the writing on the wall where
Yeah.
you don't see yourself fitting in, or you just don't want to be on a losing team, or you want more money? Like, what, those are the things that suck where
Yeah.
it's like, I
I
want
mean,
this guy.
yeah, not just that, or it's I think, the mentality of an 18, 19, 20-year-old, I'm better than the guy ahead of me, when you're really not. And you're like, well, hell, I'm just going to leave and go somewhere else. And then a lot of these kids are going to get sucked in the portal and never, make it to anything else. And then they go to the next school, and then it's the next thing. Like I texted you yesterday, it was like, what, 2,900 kids in the portal last year alone. And I threw the number 10%. 10% is probably not going to 10% is probably going to be good. And when you think about the 10% of 2,900 is like 220 around there. So you're still telling me 200 and some kids are still going to be impactful at their next school, which
Right.
is still not realistic. We're
It's
looking at
no.
what, 30 to 40 people, 30 to 40 kids.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's literally, if you think about the top 100 guys in this year's class, or the top
Mm-hmm.
50 guys in the 2023 class or the 2024 class, that are basically going to be your basic big time 5-star and high 4-star recruits that are coming in your class now. Those guys are going to be the impact guys on your team. Those are the guys in the 22 class and the 2019 class that are basically hitting the portal because they're the hotshot guy that everybody wants. That everybody wants, that Keon Coleman or the Cam Ward, those big time guys. Will Norman, he hasn't proven shit. He hasn't ever played it. He's played no downs. So it's like,
Yeah.
yes, you are a high caliber recruit. Yes, a new
Yeah. That
scenery
doesn't mean
could be
anything.
a new scenery could be the recipe for you to have success.
Yeah.
But again, so you're looking at some of these guys that were like these high hotshot recruits that basically didn't play last year. They're like, well, I'll just go somewhere else and go get another bag, and I'll try my best and get on the field. Or you have like a kid.
Yeah.
There's a kid from Jacksonville who went to Mandarin, who is from FIU. Well, he just had
Mitchell,
like a
Chris
12.
Mitchell.
Yeah, he just had a 1,200-yard receiving year. he might be a hot commodity for a Florida Gator team or a Florida State team or a
Yeah,
Miami
yeah.
team, you know, to
Well,
whereas
that's where
like
it kind of benefits you in a
right,
sense of a kid that may not be highly recruited, and then you could get, into a school and prove yourself, like a Jared Verse. Look at Jared Verse.
right.
He went to a small school and got noticed,
Yeah,
and then got on the scene with Florida State. So there are good and bad sides of it, of the whole transfer portal thing. And I think what also helps kids, like if I had a kid playing high school football, the one thing I would tell them to do, I'm sitting there criticizing the transfer portal, but at the same time, I would educate my kid, get early college credits. Go in
right.
if you're going. Think about it. If you're going
Well,
in the
well,
school,
a lot of them are doing that now, and a lot of them are like the thing now is like hell. These kids are all pretty much early enrollees. They're all ready to
yeah.
go in
But
January.
what,
So
what
like
I'm
that,
saying is, you look at it like this: get into school with your AA, right? You go there, you spend your 2 years there. Even if after your freshman year you don't like it, you could transfer. You can get a second transfer because you'll be a
yeah,
grad transfer in two
exactly,
years.
exactly.
So
No, it's
theoretically, a lot of these guys, the rule is you only get one free transfer, but really you get
yeah.
two or
No, and
three,
that,
as
my
long
thing
as
with the
you're a grad.
my thing with the grad transfer is that means you ain't that good if you couldn't do it in two places, you know. But
No, I agree,
that
but then
third
again,
place,
sometimes you could
might
be
be
in a
the
bad
spot.
situation.
Yeah, like well, here's the bottom line too. Hell, you ain't going to the league, you know.
No, no,
Like
no.
the
If
percentage
you're
of like
transferring like that,
the percentage of like we talk about how these guys think they're going to the
yeah.
NFL is crazy. Like one or two
But you gotta
guys.
leave your but you gotta leave yourself options though.
No,
Options
I agree with
in
it.
anything. I agree with you 100%, but you gotta have options.
I agree with that too. And like I say, the thing that sucks is what I was basically starting this whole conversation with is basically the differences of what we used to know, you know, like I
Hmm.
say 15, 20 years ago is like, man, we got this guy for 4 years. Let's do something with him. He's a ride or die. He's orange and blue. He's green and green and orange. You know, let's go throw up the U, give me the gator chomp. And like you like lived and died by your university and where you were at. And
Yeah.
that's the you think about it, Ed Reed, right? You know, you think about the love he had for the Canes. And like
Hmm.
now, like James Williams is like, yeah, he cares about the Canes, but it's just like, it's just different, to be like if I'm
I'm
just
getting
using
that
him as an
bag, man.
example. Yeah, no, and it's
Yeah.
like, it's like an ETN, it's like, man, I love this kid. He toasts the rock, Can I blame him on his situation right now on wanting to possibly transfer? No, I can't.
No.
Hell, pay me more because I'm worth it. I want to go play
Hmm.
for a winning team because we suck. I want to get more carries because you're splitting my time and I'm not the starter. Like all those
Hmm.
are like X,
Those are
X, X. You
they're
know,
major factors that you have to
yeah. So,
factor in. And
so if Georgia or LSU or Clemson want to pay me,
yeah,
millions, and I'm going to be the guy, like,
yeah.
why would you stay?
But
You
but
know?
it's you also hit the nail on the head when you said making it to the NFL. 1%. 1% of college football players make it to the NFL. So
Yeah,
if you're Cam Ward, who's not, I'm just throwing his name out there
yeah.
because I don't think Cam Ward would
He's
be
not
an
an
NFL
NFL type.
quarterback.
Exactly, exactly.
He could probably transition to receiver or something like that. But let's just say hypothetically, Cam Ward transfers somewhere, he gets his bag, and then he's not an NFL quarterback. He's not an NFL at all. At least he benefited off of his name, image, and
College
likeness in
days.
college.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's no different than a math kid going to Georgia Tech and becoming an architect, and he's making money while he's at Georgia Tech because his brain's big and he could figure out stuff and whatnot. Fit up off of that. I mean, it's no different than a musician going to Florida or FAMU or wherever, and they could benefit off of their name, image, and likeness while they're in school. So it's kind of that. Like I say, as a fan, you hate to see it, you don't want to see it, but as someone that would be a parent of a kid, you be doing them injustice if you're not telling them, to keep your options open, even though you love Florida or you love
Right.
Miami or you love Florida State. That's just something you have to do, and you have to keep in the back of your mind. That's just the way we live today.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It sucks, but it is.
Yeah. We're all capitalists. We all want money. We all want more
Yep.
money. And
Hmm.
so looking
Yeah.
for the best situation, who can do
Yeah.
better for me.
Yep. And I
Like I
expect a
say,
lot of turnover at Miami, Florida State, Florida.
yeah.
Between entering the draft, transfer portal,
What you
but
expect?
guys are
What you
going to come
expect?
in.
Yeah, no, exactly. What you expect is, the team, and this is the key to kind of stopping this in a sense is win. Obviously, you're not going to lose your target guys, but like Georgia's going to have to. I've already saw one of their backup star linebackers, highly rated guy. He's already leaving,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so it's like he basically was a freshman who obviously didn't get enough playing time and
Yep.
said, you know
Ohio
what, I'm going to
State's
go
losing the
somewhere
edge
else.
rusher too.
Yeah,
Like
so
everyone, it's happening. I think as fans are so fixated on their team, and they just see what's going on in their team, and they don't see what's going on in the rest of the country, like kind of like how we pay attention to. And then you're
yeah,
like, hey man, it's
yeah,
happening at every school.
it's not just your team. You're going to lose 10 guys,
Well,
or more.
remember,
Like again, you're going to lose back like the kicker, like Mahalik. He's transferring. Like,
yeah.
yeah, why would he stay at Florida to be the backup to Trace Mack for the
Yeah.
next few
Well,
years?
it was funny. Remember last year when everyone's like, "Oh, before the national championship game, look at Georgia. They have no transfers. No one's leaving Georgia. Everyone's staying in Georgia." As soon as that game was over, how many guys jumped in the
Yeah,
portal? I
it
mean, you look
was
at AD Mitchell. You never thought AD Mitchell would have left Georgia to go to
right,
Texas, but
right. Yeah,
he
that's
left and went to Texas. He went back home and got more money. And
how
I
about
mean, it's
Jermaine
worked out
Burton? How
for him.
about Jermaine Burton leaving Georgia to go to Bama? You're like,
And
hey,
Bama, yeah, exactly. So it happens. I mean, the rich are going to get richer just because the bigger schools, the top
right now
30 schools, are going to
that's
have
what
money.
sucks. That's what sucks is
Hmm.
that too, but like more so of like it would burn me up, to see like ETN play for LSU or Georgia next year. It's just like that would just be like
Yeah, it's
they
going to be
basically
weird.
they're winning teams. They ponied up more money maybe than they can offer up and whatever. But like I say, it
You
is
know
what
who
it
I
is.
blame?
And
You know who I
huh?
blame, Sponge? Kevin
Billy
Durant.
fucking Napier,
Nope,
Kevin
Kevin
Durant,
Durant. Kevin
not Ed
Durant.
O'Bannon, not Ed O'Bannon.
You no, nope. I blame Kevin Durant because you were up 3-1. You lost to the Warriors, and you went to a 73-9 team.
Right? Yeah, Oklahoma
It's his
City to
fault.
Golden State.
Yep.
I'm going here
Sorry to
because
bring
I'm
up
going.
basketball talk, but yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm going with
but back to what
going
you
where
were
the
saying.
winners
Can you
go,
really?
baby.
But even if you guys, even if Florida won the East, about to play Saturday, Billy had a great year. They're still going to lose guys.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Guys are still good. I mean, your ETNs of the world will stay, but
He
you're
well,
still going to
he
lose
might even
guys.
he would might even leave if we were winning like that too because he wants to be the guy,
Yeah,
because
exactly. So it
like
doesn't
I've
matter
already
if you're
heard
winning or
I already
losing.
heard Montreal staying, so now he's like, I got to deal
He's
with
Billy's
Montreal
guy.
again.
Why
Yeah,
would he leave?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, maybe he thinks he could go pro. I don't. Who the hell knows? I don't
Yeah.
know. Just get out
Yep.
of here. But yeah, like. But anyway, let's talk about the ugly, disgusting, boring, awful. I don't know how many
I didn't think
adjectives
that
I'm
game
gonna
was
throw.
boring. That game was more entertaining
Yeah,
than Michigan Ohio State.
it was
But I
just
guess it's easy to say that when I'm the outsider watching you and
yeah,
Ricky go at it during the
yeah.
game.
No, and it was just ugly, and there
Yeah,
was the Gators had some opportunities early.
plenty,
Um,
plenty.
they actually got some stops defensively that they
Hmm.
needed, and they couldn't take advantage by missing some field goals. Couldn't take advantage of after they got the safety and had good field position to run a stupid ass trick play that lost you 14 yards.
I don't get
It's,
that.
that set you up to basically, and I told you, right. I said, like, after that, I was like, this is the drive now where your defense has held up the entire game. You're going to give
Yep.
up 7 right before the half here and cut this thing in half. And it's going to be 12-7 at halftime. And that's exactly what happened. And they were getting the
As
ball out of the break. It was
I
just like,
get, I for the life of me, I get trying to take a shot down the field and you think you're going to catch them.
yeah,
I
take a
don't think,
shot, not a double reverse
yeah,
or passes behind the line of scrimmage.
yeah, and you're putting a rookie quarterback. You might as well call him a rookie quarterback, a
Yeah,
young quarterback in a bad situation
totally
against a
rookie.
good aggressive in that play call, and it was just a slow developing
Way
play.
too slow.
And then on the flip side, if you're Florida State, you shouldn't run that either against, Florida's been struggling on defense, but they still have athletes. I mean, it's no different than the Marshall sack, where there's no receiver on that side. There's a tight end, and he had to full go, and they got the
Yeah,
sack on Rodemaker. Like you just got to think about those things. And that the Lions play, obviously the spitting in the player's face, and
that
then
was dumb as
that
hell.
play that was the different. I won't say that's the difference in the game, and that's why you guys lost. But going back to a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the safety in the Miami Florida State game, it changes the momentum in the game
Yeah,
because, like you said, even if you guys say punt or whatever on that drive or get 3, it's 15 zip.
Yeah.
Even if you could beat and like the when you guys got the safety where you pinned them deep, it just changes everything. And then those 2 plays just, you know,
Yeah, well, that drive that
yeah,
was the drive that basically some things started. Florida State
yeah.
had a couple nice runs on that drive right before the half to
Hmm.
get in the end zone. They had, we were playing soft coverage on 3rd and 9.
I didn't get it.
Gave up an easy catch to Johnny Wilson to set him
Yep.
up at the 1. So you're like the whole beginning of the game, everything was going your way, and
Hmm.
so you're the other thing too is that what they went away from that I thought going back to the week before when Max Brown had to come in for Mertz when he got hurt was they needed to run more read option with him. He's good at hiding the ball. It's like they went away from it, and then every single time he dropped back to pass in the second half, it was like Katie bar the door. We
Oh,
can't block these guys
yeah.
at all.
Yep.
Having Austin Barber didn't play, your best tackle, and then Damian
Yep.
George looked like a little bit. What else?
Boy,
Jared Verse
that
like
play
murked his ass.
hey,
I mean,
listen,
like I say, that
eh,
defensive line is really good. We know that, and they
listen,
made Florida's offensive line look terrible.
we've been waiting to see that defensive line take over all season. We've been critical. I thought Braylon Fisk in that first quarter was a man amongst boys, and he was just setting the tone. At first, he was the only one on the Florida State defensive line setting the tone, and he was manhandling those guards in the center. And then all of a sudden, Verse turned it on, and it was just after those 2 guys were just manhandling the Florida defensive line, it was just over. And
Well,
the other critical play calling was the Max Brown QB runs with nobody in the like. We all know he's about to run the damn football, and
yeah,
you
the
have
quarterback
nobody
draws.
back there with him for
No,
RPO.
yeah, no, those were dumb, and it was like I say, the thing about it was, here's this is a great recipe in these types of games. We knew Max Brown was limited on throwing the
Mhm.
football. So what's easy for a defensive line waiting to feast is a team that knows that they can't throw. And
Yep.
so we don't respect anything you got. So
But
we are
what's
coming after you. Like we said,
but
blitz
what's
off the
crazy,
bus.
it's yeah.
And all the other thing I was going to say is what's more better of a recipe than one of the worst defenses in the UF history to get your
Mhm.
offense somewhat right?
Yeah.
So here you go, guys. Layup. Like this defense is going to give
But
up
Sponge,
multiple times.
he actually Max Brown had 2 good 3 throws on that first
Oh, he,
drive. The
yeah,
2, the slant to
out route
Wilson and out to Wilson.
that was like one of the best throws ever. But I
Yeah.
guess that was we still had FSU on their heels at that time, so they maybe weren't
True.
bringing everybody, So and
Yeah.
that was still kind of somewhat scripted. But yeah, I mean, the fourth quarter was just a comedy of errors.
Ooh, boy.
Terrible, terrible. Negative yard, 0 positive plays. You only ran like 9 total plays or 10 total plays. You had 50 yards in penalties. You gave up the 10
Yeah.
points in that. You had the late hit. I mean, again, the whole slide rule. I heard my boy Bud Elliott was talking about they need to change the slide rules because the slide is to allegedly protect the quarterback.
That was a late
But in all,
slide.
but in all actuality, guys are still getting killed, when they're
Yeah.
sliding because you don't know if a guy's going to slide or not. So the defensive guy, it's 3rd down and long. You're trying to prevent this guy from getting a 4th down, and maybe you get yourself back in the game by only being down a
Yeah.
possession. So those 2 dudes are selling out to go get him,
Yeah.
and yeah, he slid, and heck yeah, by the letter of the law, personal foul, concussed.
Yeah.
So it's like they need to like do something with that rule. I mean, it's hard to say he slid too late, and you can't put parameters on it. But it's almost like you gotta maybe you can't even outlaw the slide because it's just like you got to like go forward or something, like fall
Yeah.
down. I don't know because guys are the
It was
slide is
kind of
not
it was kind of it was late slide. I mean, it should have been a flag thrown on it, but it was kind of a late slide. And like you say, as a defender, you're in no man's land of what if this guy kind of does a fake slide and then
yeah,
keeps running and then he picks up the first. I know that should be a penalty now because of Kenny Pickett a couple years
yeah,
ago at
yeah.
Pitt.
No,
He did the
like I
fake
say,
slide and kept going,
it
but
was put it this way, it wouldn't have mattered anyways. We weren't going to stop them, and it's
no,
just
no.
again,
I mean, the first half, the the missed field goal on the first drive, the missed field goal at the half. I think what was huge too, that drive at the end of the half, was that holding call where you're in good position to possibly get a touchdown on the Montreal run, and they call holding. Yep. I mean, you probably still get 3 out of that, but there's 6 points right there you leave off the board.
No, I know, and that's where it's almost like you needed that early, like Tennessee style game where you're up.
Yeah.
Give yourself room for screw ups in the second half, to give yourself a mess up. And then, Florida State might be pressing a little more if the score would have been like 16 or 17-0, 18-0 or something, instead of them giving up
the ball even more.
Yeah, you're like, oh, Florida State, they got to come out and play. And they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They scored right before the half. They got the ball and they took the lead. Yeah. And then it was over. It was like we were playing chase, and it was like, nope, you're not chasing these guys. And again, I didn't think we were gonna win the game.
Right.
I was happy that we were in the game. I knew that we would give Rodemaker, problems early in the crowd and all that stuff. But again,
I think they stopped blitzing too. Yeah, I think Jonah Hill on the sideline, I don't know what the hell he was doing. Your defensive coordinator, he looks like Jonah Hill to me. All the celebrating and all the stupid crap he was doing on the side. Hey, dude, just call your defense. And then in the second half, you're not blitzing, you're not pressuring Rodemaker. Like, Florida State did a better job of protecting the quarterback and getting the run game, but no one expected you to win. You got to continue blitzing off the bus,
Yeah.
So I don't know what that was. Yeah, I don't know what the hell that was. And, from, like I say, for Florida, you don't believe in moral victories. It's expected playing against a backup quarterback. You had plenty of opportunities to, I won't say put the game away, but like you say, 17-0 at the half is better than 12-7 at the half.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It makes a huge difference. Even if they would have got the field goal to make it 15-7.
Right.
You're up to
you still technically would have been up even if they scored in the second half, unless they would have went for 2 just to tie it. But the big question mark too is, what does that game look like if Jordan Travis is still hurt but Graham Mertz is healthy? Again,
it's a different game.
Totally,
it's a totally different game.
Yeah, so I think we'll get into Florida State where we think I don't want to ask you now what you thought of Florida State and where they lie going into this week. We'll talk about that when we break.
Well, that I was just going to say, well, not to get yelled at again through text. Let's flip it to the Florida State side of things. From the Florida State side of things, you could see that Tate was a little rattled at the beginning of the game. I mean, they only had 6 plays in their first 2 possessions. The defense, I thought the defense did a great job
in the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, offensively, they played in their territory. They didn't get past the 50-yard line until that drive to score.
Yep.
Yeah, so I thought the Tate was a little rattled. The offensive line was a little bad, but then again, when you're protecting with 5 and Florida sending 6 and 7, that tends to happen. Like I say, Fisk, it looked, man. Like I say, I got to give the kid praise in the first half. He was balling out. He was controlling the line of scrimmage. Jared Verse turned it on. Peyton really didn't do much, but he did enough. And those linebackers are still good. ACC officials are god awful once again. That was not a roughing the passer on Akeem Dent. I mean, what are you supposed to do? He's swiping for the ball and trying to make a play, and he hits Max Brown's face mask with his bicep. Then they throw a flag, and it's like, one, that should be reviewed, and you could easily overturn that. That was just terrible. I mean, the next play you guys scored on the next play, that was a Montreal touchdown, I think.
Yeah. So it was like the next play or 2 we scored off that.
Yeah. But as the game went on for Florida State, you saw Tate kind of settle in. He started like the 4th possession. You start seeing him hitting his receivers. Johnny Wilson with some good pretty big catches on the sideline and down in the red zone area. They were able to, the offensive line finally figured it out. I mean, Florida did help by not blitzing and pressuring anymore. Offensive line figured it out. Benson was able to get off and get 3 touchdowns. I mean, Trey Benson had 19 carries, 95 yards, and 3 TDs.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want, as you're going into this part of the year, is to get that running game going. Because you're going to have to run the ball in the playoff. You're going to have to run the ball. Keon Coleman wasn't really a factor. He had one blunder on a punt where Florida got the safety. The ball got down, I think, like at the 6. That the one punt return he had was huge, where he got to midfield.
Yeah.
So from the Florida State side of things, you're not mad. They do what they did all year. You literally saw the adjustments being made throughout the game. And then in the second half, Florida State's a good second half team where the defense, they dial it up and they make you make decisions on what do? Do we go for it? Do we play conservative? Because the problem is their offense is really good, especially with JT, who's not there anymore, we know. But during the season where they could get a quick 3 and out, they're going to go down the field real quick with Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, or they're going to run the football. So this game, it's not a true representation of what Florida State can be the rest of the year, but it's a rivalry game. I expected it to be kind of close. Like you say, it's a totally different game with JT and Graham Mertz playing.
If Jordan Travis played, we would have got beat by 21. Like that's
easy.
That's what I'm saying. I totally agree. This is what I was meaning by like rivalry games too. Is like, yes, I get the whole rivalry aspect, but in a sense, when you go back and look at it, the teams like the Iron Bowl, which we'll get into briefly here in a second, and like Georgia Tech, like 9 times out of 10, those teams don't, when they're better, when you're just the better team, they don't mess around. They stomp you and like just wipe the floor.
I get that.
And there is the game where, like you say, it's like Wazoo is a good team and they banged out with Washington. So most rivalry games, yes, are competitive.
Yeah,
what I was meaning was just the level of like where Florida State is with a full competent, where Georgia is with a full complement, where Alabama is with a full, clip. Those teams, when they play these rivalry games, like they mop the floor with you. And when you're where Florida's at, is all I'm saying. When you're where Georgia Tech's at, when you're where Auburn's at right now. And again, this game I knew would be close just because it was a battle of the backup quarterback.
Right, but you knew, but we both said last week that at the end of the day, the team with better talent was going to win.
Yeah.
Or I won't say better talent, more talent. There's a difference between better talent and more talent when you're throwing waves of guys.
Florida State has the way better team right now,
Yeah, for sure.
They've got all the weapons, so it's like how can they get these weapons the ball?
Well, then on defense, they're rolling in 8-9 guys on their front.
Yeah. And guess what? Jordan Travis doesn't play defense, so that defense is still intact, and they've been playing pretty good all year.
For sure. But you got to figure out.
I'm not ready to give Florida State my flowers. I'll talk about
no. But I mean, we're not jumping into the Louisville game. We're still talking about this game. But yeah, I think it's Florida had their opportunities. Like
they did.
The other criticism I have of Florida State is I still think their offensive line is not that great. They're good. They're not great. They had issues. And then at times, I don't know what the hell Mike's calling. You put Brock Glenn in there and you're like, oh, we're going to throw it on his first pass.
Right.
Like, what if Costello catches that, picks that off?
I know.
At which he almost did.
He threw it right to him.
He threw it right to him. And I'm like,
I figure my boy 14 can't make a play.
So, I mean, but he made a play.
Yeah.
But he didn't make a play all at the same time. And it's just like, Mike, what are you calling right there? Like, I get you're like, well, we got our third string in and they're going to expect us to run. But yeah, everyone's expecting you to run. Even your team is expecting you to run. Even if you did an RPO and let them get on the outside and just say, hey, just run and get like that could have been the difference in the game as well. Because at that point, they were only up, 2? Yeah. I think it was 17-15 at that point.
It was, let me go look up.
Yeah, it was 17-15 because Rodemaker came back in, and that's the Benson score from where he went in backwards on that same drive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get believing in your guys. Of course, you believe in your guys.
They were up 2. Like I say, they were up 2, and like who knows? He picks that off. He maybe runs it back for 6, or you set up the field goal, and then you take the 1-point lead, and then now it's a whole different game. But no, that's what I'm saying. The game was still in doubt at that point in time. It was just like, it was like, would Rodemaker come back in the game? He does,
Somehow he passed the concussion protocol. Yeah. His eyes were all over the place when he got that hit.
Again, like I say, when you were able to rely on a Benson run, that's what you needed. So again,
the others stepped up. What we said last week.
Florida's terrible. They've been terrible. So, with
Did you know this one? This is the first 3-year losing streak in 78 years of Florida history.
of what?
3 straight losing seasons. Sorry, 3 straight. This is the first time in 78 years the Gators have
Yeah,
had 3
because
straight losing seasons.
Mullins' season ended in debacle form, and obviously last year was 5-7 or 6-7 because they lost the bowl game because they were 6-6, and then obviously we're 5-7 this
Crazy.
year. Yeah, no,
It's
what's sad is I was literally thinking about it today. I'm like, damn, did we fire Dan Mullen too soon? And
oh
part
no,
of
I
me,
thought you were on board for firing Dan Mullen.
I know because it's such a
He's just not a recruiter.
his ego. But here's the thing now: how good of a recruiter? Like, yes, you got to be a dog on the trail, but if you have a
Mhm.
good NIL in place now, and you have like somewhat of a good recruiting, like is top 10 good? That's where he lived in that top 10 to 15.
So you're
Now
not a
that's
fan of the Gator Collective?
I mean, well, we just have it. We got a brand new one now. So I mean, I wasn't. They reshuffled it, but again, money is not really the issue. It's more so of just being able to get the dogs there, and he was still doing that, but he's not. He's not your Kirby style recruiter, and it's more so of like, okay, well, damn, I feel like X's and O's wise, Dan is a great caller. The problem was
Yeah,
with his tenure is his freaking defense sucked.
yeah.
Like
But so with
it's
that being
double
said,
edged.
how do you feel about Billy firing 2 of your top recruiters?
Yeah, I mean, Corey Raymond, I get. So your double edged sword with that is Corey Raymond is a good recruiter, but the secondaries look like trash the last 2 years.
Why don't
So
you move him to recruiting coordinator?
I mean, you think Corey wants to take that
Probably
demotion?
not. I mean,
Exactly. So
he probably did. It gave him the option, like either
yeah,
you do this or you don't have a
yeah, no,
job.
yeah. There's no way. So that's what, dude. Corey Raymond will find a job tomorrow.
Oh, he's probably got a job
He's
today. He
he's
hasn't
probably
announced
up there
yet.
with he's probably up there with Kirby because their DB coach just left to go to
Yep,
Syracuse.
the
So I
Syracuse.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
at all surprised just because guess what? It's Kirby's defense. It's
Hmm.
Schumann's defense. Just coach the DBs. Coach these 5 stars. Well, like all I'm saying is the secondary has looked horrible. Now, granted, you had 2 true freshmen back there at the safety spot, but
Yeah.
your 5-star DB Jason Marshall, he's regressed. He looks terrible. He don't want to tackle nobody. Jalen Kimber, he sucks. So,
Isn't he in the portal too?
yep, I think so. Well, I don't know if he's a force to announce, but I mean, guess what? This is his second portal transfer. He came from Georgia. So what does that tell you? You ain't going to the league, Jalen Kimber. So go play DB somewhere else.
Yeah.
Go get torched somewhere else, dog, because you suck. But
Yeah.
it is what it is. But the whole thing with firing the D line coach, you knew some guys are going to get fired. I'm not. I think there's probably more. But
How do you feel about Armstrong?
like it's weird. Everybody likes to pick on the guy, but when you watch tape, like he actually is calling some good defenses. It's just bottom line, part of it, we ain't executing. So it goes back to the
Yeah.
players. So it goes back to either coaching the players in practice on, hey, this is what you're going to see, or these guys just ain't good. So then it's the combination of both stink. So
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
is he a dog recruiter?
I have no idea.
Is Jonah
He's,
Hill a dog recruiter?
he's a young dude. And like I said, I think he's the only guy that shows any kind of passion on the sideline, which I do like. The rest of them all look like Billy, like, just donkey Eeyore face. So it's just like, I don't know. I can't judge it. So it's like, okay, fire him. You better go get somebody better. That's the whole thing right now too with the whole coaching. I was talking about coaching carousel and coaching changes
Mhm.
is like the only way you're going to go get somebody is if you literally steal somebody, or you're going to be starting anew with some coordinator or some hot name guy and all this, that, and the other. And like that ain't where it's at. The problem is, can you go steal, like we said before, a Dan Lanning? Would Dan Lanning leave Oregon? I don't know how much Texas A&M tried to push come to Texas A&M. I don't know. I don't know those things. Where he said, no, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
To whereas for Ohio State fans calling to fire Ryan Day, like shit, come on, Ryan Day, fire Ryan Day and come on down to Gainesville. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like stupid. Going back to the James Franklin argument. Fire James Franklin. Give me 11
I
wins a
get
year.
it, but when you don't beat your rivals, that's what fans do.
Yeah, well,
Which
guess
is
what?
crazy. Is like
I'll
Ryan
take
Day is
again. I will go back and tell you. I'll lose to Georgia and Florida State and go 11-2 every year. And guess what? We'll still be in the damn playoff.
Well,
Because if you're
next
losing to
year,
those
yeah,
two,
starting next year, more than
yes.
likely, but not this year.
We weren't going 11-2 anyways. But all I'm
just
saying
saying.
is, all I'm saying is if you're 11-2 every single year and you're in the playoff and you're winning a playoff game because you might not have to play your rival unless you have to meet them again in like the Final Four or something. Give me that every year, man. I know
it's after
Ohio
a while
State
it gets
fans are
old.
crazy. Ohio State
I
fans are
mean, the
crazy.
difference is with Ryan Day, he's 1-3 against Michigan and 40-0 against the rest of the Big Ten.
Yeah, he's lost 7 games in his tenure since he took over for Urban. 7, and 3 of them are to Michigan. You know what I'm saying? So
that's a big deal up there.
All right, we'll just segue into this because I know you want to talk about it. It's the big, huge game that was on Saturday afternoon at noon.
This is a snooze fest of all snooze fest.
It was
and
not.
I think
this was nothing like the other games. This was nothing like the Penn State game. This was nothing like the Penn State Michigan. This was actually a better game.
In my opinion, this is a snooze fest.
I mean, it went over.
It was a better snooze fest
the over
than the
hit
other
big
two.
time. The over killed me on my bet this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm like, give me the snooze fest game that didn't happen. These teams actually played some offense, and the defense got a little bit pressed.
In this game, I think Michigan did what they wanted to do. They were aggressive. Even with, I think those first 3 games, not having Harbaugh kind of trained them in the mentality and to get used to Shamar Moore or whatever his name is.
Well, he wasn't even the interim in the first 3. They kind of mixed it up. There was a couple different
ones. But at the same time, they're used to Harbaugh not being there.
Right.
So it wasn't like a surprise that the last 3 games there was no Harbaugh. I think Michigan did a good job of just beating them up and playing great defense. And my criticism of Ohio State has been from week 1 to week 13 or whatever week we're on. They don't have a trigger man. And I think Ryan Day got out coached. And I think that when you have, as Gus Johnson would say, Maserati Marv and those guys, you got to find creative ways to get those guys the football. They did not find creative ways to get the football. He probably had 8 targets the whole game. And that is atrocious when you're sitting there telling me you have one of the best players and one of the best wide receivers in the country, and you can't find a way to get them the damn football.
Yeah, no, Kyle McCord has been up and down this whole season. He had his good moments. He had his, bad moments. He obviously, put it this way, the game was even except for one play in a sense. You hate to harp on early plays, but when you go back and look at the pivotal plays that like turn things, it was that first interception that really was like the major key to the game that killed him. He threw that inside route where the guy jumped it and set Michigan up for a 5-yard line.
That was kind of on Marv as well because it felt like he didn't run his route fully.
No, I know, but I mean, I'm still going to blame McCord on throwing a not so good ball. But the guy from Michigan did make a play as well. Will Johnson made a play undercutting it. But my thing is, so but that's how close in margin this game was in a sense. If he doesn't make that mistake, then you got a tie ball game, whatever, as they go on. And he obviously threw the late interception, last play of the game, he was under duress and he just kind of threw it up. But I thought the game was still evenly matched. I thought it just came down to Michigan made less mistakes. That's kind of been their MO. Like JJ McCarthy, hasn't been.
No, Michigan.
JJ McCarthy hasn't been.
Did a great job.
Yeah, no, and like I say, JJ McCarthy in these last 3 games where he finally played teams who had defenses or teams who had pulses has looked average at best. He's been the game manager. He hasn't really turned it over. The running game with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards has been the difference. They've leaned heavily on the defense. So like I say, it's they did what they needed to do to beat Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. And again, how good is Michigan? I don't know. I think they're really good because I think their defense is good. And I think they do have a good running game. And when your quarterback is, hell, what did J.J. McCarthy do last year in the playoff? He threw 2 pick sixes against TCU, and they got booted. And then, you had TCU go to the national championship game. But Ohio State, for all intents and purposes, they had a good year. It just came down to, your big game, your big rival. And when it came down to most important, you had the key turnover that kind of led the tight game into your one loss. So it's, again, I think Ohio State had a good year. I think Michigan's good too. So I don't, like we said, the Big Ten is so bad this year, except for those three teams, that you just can't measure stick. Because, like I say, when Iowa is your next best team, like, dude, they suck. They're terrible. Like, yes, they have a pretty solid defense, but I think Michigan trounces them because they'll score a touchdown in that game. It'll be like, that game's gonna be like 35-7, something like that. And so it's like, how do you gauge both Ohio State and Michigan? I asked you, I said, how far did you think Ohio State would fall? And you were like, they need to fall at like 8. They need to be like the back of the one-loss teams. I'm like, there's no way the committee is going to drop them that far just because they got too much a stout.
I just don't,
clout.
Like, I just, for me, the reason why I put them at 8 is almost the same reason we're going to talk about Florida State. If you have no quarterback, who the hell are you going to beat? Like, it's nothing against all the other guys on Ohio State's team. The problem is the quarterback. They're not going to win with Kyle McCord at quarterback. Expect them to go and get a transfer this summer. Portal season. So? Like that's my thing. Like, we both picked Ohio State to win this past week because we both thought, well, maybe Kyle McCord could be a game manager and not put them in bad situations, which he almost didn't. But at the same time, he had 2 picks. And
no, what's crazy is, you know what his stats are for the year?
I'm sure they're good because he plays in a terrible Big Ten. Sponge, go through their damn schedule.
I know.
Of course, he's going to have a good.
Again, we had the argument of like, who have they beaten? And I said they had 2 at the time when they beat Penn State. They had 2 of the best wins in the country with Penn State and Notre Dame. Those are still 2 teams in the top 15 in the college football rankings now. And we'll get to our rankings again. This one really surprised. We're already jumping ahead, dude. Oregon doesn't have they have 1 top 25 win. Did you know that? And that was last week.
Yeah, probably over Oregon State.
That was last week. They have no other win, but we all love Oregon. It's just because they have that eye test of like, man, I love what Bo Nix is doing and this and that. But like, they have, technically, Ohio State has better wins than Oregon, a team who they're shoo-in. Notre Dame's not good.
Notre Dame and Penn State aren't good teams. Notre Dame's decent. Penn State is not. Who the hell did Penn State play this year? There were 2 games that they had decent. They lost.
They lost 2 games. They lost to Ohio State.
Stop trying to sell me on Penn. Stop trying to sell me on the Big Ten when the Big Ten is terrible. The Big Ten is terrible outside of those 3 teams.
I agree. I don't disagree. But I mean, so you're basically you're downgrading Penn State by saying they're not good. But they didn't. None of the games they played were close. They beat the hell out of all those bums. So like that Michigan State's terrible. Guess what? They beat them 42-0. So it's not like
do this instead of looking at Kyle McCord's numbers. Go look at Drew Aller's numbers.
No, I don't want to look at Drew Aller.
Go look at Drew Aller's numbers.
You're talking about McCord.
No,
well,
go look at Drew Aller's numbers.
I will do that. But I want to give you McCord
right now, and then tell me that he
3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. That's McCord. That's pretty good. I'm going to go to Drew Aller now just because.
Go look at Drew Aller's numbers.
Are they trash? I don't think
no.
So. They're
actually not.
Fairly decent. That's what I'm saying. They're probably fairly decent. Drew Aller, baby. He's 61%, so he's 5% less completion, 2,300 yards. So he's like 700 behind Kyle McCord. 23 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Baller.
And he looked like straight ass against Ohio State and Michigan.
Those 2 defenses are really good, and they made him look very average.
They're good, but what I'm saying is the rest of the conference, it's like they didn't play anyone. I hate criticizing teams. You play who your schedule is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of these schedules have been made for years. A lot of the schedules have been changed because of conference realignment. So you've probably dropped a top team that you possibly would have played, and you had to fill it in with a Miami of Ohio or whatever. But you watching them play, you can't tell me Penn State's a good team with Drew Aller at this moment. Maybe next year they'll be better once they get skill guys around them. But I'm watching. I'm not looking at stats and all of that, because in college stats can be inflated. in a
No,
sense of
I
the
get that, and we
games you
talked about
play.
it, and we talked about it. The key was like, okay, well, look at the teams kind of around them. I still think they're ranked where they should be, about 10. Like, I wouldn't pick them to beat anybody in the top 9. I wouldn't pick them. Like
No,
maybe
what I'm
Missouri
saying.
would
No,
give them a
I'm
game.
talking. I'm basing this off Ohio State, which it almost doesn't matter where Ohio State is, 6, 7, or 8, because if Texas wins, they're going to
Yeah, that's what I'm
leapfrog
saying.
Ohio State.
The only way Ohio State gets in is if like everybody
Yeah,
loses. So
exactly,
they're
exactly.
out. They're done. They're done
Yeah,
so for sure. But I was
unless a
just
lot of losses happen this year.
yeah,
I mean, this week.
yeah, no,
But it's just
Ohio State's completely done. But
yeah.
all I'm
But I'm
going
just
back to is also, for people to be calling for Ryan Day is crazy to me.
no.
Like,
That's nuts. That's nuts. I mean, I get it. I get it, but at the same time, when you really sit down and think about it, I mean, what Harbaugh was like, what, lost 3 in a row to Ohio State when he first started,
yeah,
3 or
exactly.
4,
Yep.
and now he's flipped it. I mean, I think what it is for Ohio State fans, there was that stretch of like what 15 years where they lost to Michigan twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Tressel lost one time and Urban lost once
Yeah. Ohio State had dominated that series for a while.
for like 20 something
It was
years, just
it was kind of
about.
like the Gators, where the Gators were dominating Georgia, and now it's flipped around the other
Yeah,
way.
but that's what happens. You know, it goes in cycles. You just don't want it to
I mean,
get to the point.
they were cheating the last 2 years, so that kind of helped too. So
Yeah, clearly. But yeah, you just don't want it to get to levels of where it's it's Tennessee and Alabama where it's like
yeah, 20
it's like,
years. Yeah,
it's like 20 plus
we
years.
had a nice little run against Tennessee for a while too. There, so
Yeah, you guys did. But you know, I think that's where you don't want it to happen.
screw the Big
But
Ten talk. That was our Big Ten
clearly.
segment. That was our
Hey,
Big Ten. I was
another
killing it for you. I was killing it for you.
hey, no, you made me talk longer about that damn conference than I really wanted to.
I know. I
I
got
think
you.
that's like your
Real
goal
cool.
every week is for me to talk about the Big Ten and how terrible they are. Yep. Let's go on to the Iron Bowl. The Iron Bowl was a really good game. I think going back to the rivalry thing, I think Hugh Freeze is just a good coach, and he over the last 10 years, when he was at Ole Miss, he's the one coach that gives Nick Saban fits. I don't know how he does it. He somehow finds a way to always make that Alabama versus Ole Miss or wherever he's at game difficult. I think we saw a little bit of the bad Jalen Milroe from earlier this season pop up a couple times in this game where there's 2 passes where he threw where he was clearly past the line of scrimmage. Peyton Thorne, running quarterback, gave the defense a little fit. So I think just athletic quarterbacks now, when they have time, just do that. And like I say, Hugh Freeze is just a hell of a good play caller and a good coach. And hey,
Auburn got a couple. They got a couple lucky calls too. That kind of
for sure, yeah.
it was like where normally Bama gets some of those
Mm-hmm.
calls, and it didn't go against their way. Now, granted, they did get the only thing that kind of got them back in the game was that punt blunder. The guy muffing that
That was
punt.
yeah, with 4 minutes left.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
huge.
huge. I mean, that basically,
I mean,
it
it was a
almost
4-point game.
it reminded me of when Tank Bigsby went out of bounds a couple years ago. Where
Yeah.
it's like this thing's over. Like you just
Mm-hmm.
catch this punt, bleed this clock out, and then
But you still were in a good position to win the football game.
I know, no, for sure, and it was yeah, you're still in a position because it was 4th and 31.
I mean, but go through the sequence. It's 1st and 10. I think they probably got a couple yards. 2nd down, bad snap that takes them back to like the 25, 30.
That was where literally you're like, dude, this is
Yeah.
destined for them to bum this game.
And then 3rd down, he rolls out and he throws it to Bond at the 2-yard line, but he's like 2 yards past the line of scrimmage.
Yep. So they
And
got
you
the
lost it down,
legal,
and now it's
exactly.
4th and 31. And we're both sitting there like, man, this game's over. There's no way
I mean,
going to score this
all you
touchdown.
knew. Well, you knew. The good part was at that point in time, you were like sitting there, you're like, hey, at least you're close enough to where this is going to be a play in the end zone.
Yeah.
Can it be caught? Is it going to be tipped out? Can it get picked? Whatever. And I thought the minute it left his hand, I thought he threw it out of the back of the end zone. I didn't think he.
It's funny because that's the first thing you said. As soon as it left his hand,
it was like he threw it too deep. It was like it looked, and it was he threw it the deepest as you can get it, and
in bounds.
Yes, in bounds, as deep as you can get it in the spot to where Isaiah Bond made a hell of a catch, and it was unbelievable way to win, unbelievable way to lose.
You're sitting there like,
Auburn,
what are you doing on defense,
yeah.
Auburn?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of coverage they were running to where it was like singled up, like
Everyone
basically.
was on one side of the end
It was like,
zone, and it was one-on-one in that left corner.
yeah, I guess they felt like they could lock that one side up. I mean, Isaiah Bond once Florida Gator commit, by the way. But anyway, I
That
digress.
really
But yeah,
hurts, doesn't it? You just seeing these guys going to other places and flourishing.
well, it's just because I don't even know. I don't even think Billy tried to recruit him when like he was in one of those. It was in the Mullen year, and
Yeah.
he basically decommitted and went to Bama. But I think it was probably already in the works. But whatever. But again, Isaiah Bond has been a huge asset to that offense. He's
Mhm.
electric with the ball. Obviously Jermaine Burton's been big time. He had another big time game. He got busted on the long touchdown for 68 yards, and he went for 100.
I still think he was in on that one catch.
I do too. I do too. I thought that was a questionable. You know, it was a tough angle. They
Yeah.
called it out on the field. So like I say, the big deal is Milrow again running the ball, man. He is literally a dynamic running back when he gets an open field, over
Yeah.
100 yards, and he didn't make a mistake throwing any picks or anything. So it was just one of those games where they kind of let Auburn just hang around and have life, and they probably
Yeah.
shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And Bama's kind of had some of those games,
Mhm.
so it's going to be interesting. Obviously, this weekend, playing the number one team
Boy,
in the country, and that's going to be a
get
hell
your
of a matchup.
popcorn ready.
It's going to be a hell of a matchup for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to, we could jump right into that one and go ahead and talk about, or excuse me, wrong game. The Dogs. We could preview the rematch, but since we're talking Bama, might as well talk Bama Georgia. Like I say, this is a recipe of one of those old time classics of Kirby and Nick, and
Yeah.
where does Georgia? They had a tight game, against Georgia Tech where they kind of
I
just
think they
didn't.
sat a lot of guys. They
They
did
sat
load
everybody.
management.
They
They
sat
did a
everybody.
load management game
They definitely
against
said.
Tech,
They
which
said
we didn't
Ladd
we didn't
sit,
know
Bauer
for
sit. Yeah, because we weren't
well, we
watching it.
didn't know as
We
we're
had it
watching
on.
it.
Yeah, we had it on the small TV with no audio. So
And then come to find out, you're like, hold on a second. They pulled a Popovich?
yeah, they basically sat everybody and rested them up to get
Yeah.
ready for this game, and which was smart because I mean it's kind of like, hey, we can beat Georgia Tech, and I think it's probably a little closer than they wanted it to be, but
Yeah.
that's Georgia Tech's Super Bowl at this time, trying to.
Yeah. But when you have the numbers like Kirby has and the recruiting, when you have the top one class the last 6 years, you just roll different guys in where your Marvin Jones of the world, true freshmen get to play. And, Oscar Delp has to play more because they sat Bowers, and Dylan Bell is still being Dylan Bell, Superman, because
Yeah,
Ladd's out. And, you just go down the list of guys when you're both of your starting linebackers aren't playing. The top player in the country, arguably, and Brock Bowers isn't playing. You're one of your best receiving threats, and Ladd McConkey isn't. I mean, you just go
yeah,
down the list, and you're just like, really?
yeah. No, for
But
sure.
they found a way to win, and now they got to get ready for this week. This is a big week in Atlanta. Um, Man, I don't know which way to go with this one because, like, we've been calling Georgia the machine all year for the most part. But it comes down to my criticism of Georgia's defense, not a criticism, but just an observation. They struggle with a running quarterback, and they're playing probably the ultimate running quarterback this week
Yeah,
in Jalen Milrow. I mean, obviously, for Bama to win, Milrow's not going to be able to make those mistakes he made against Auburn. Going to have to keep the offense on the field and going. And if Georgia, you got to watch for those bombs he likes to throw to Burton deep downfield when he's sucking everybody up. When the secondary is coming down thinking he's about to run, and he just heaves a dime over the top of him. I
yeah. If
mean,
you can get that single coverage, that's where
yeah,
if a guy can get behind you, he's been good at that. And like I
yeah.
said, so where are you leaning to? Who are you picking? Come on, give me that, and then I'll give you my breakdown analysis.
Man, is I hate going against Nick, man. It's backfired on me all season. Every time I went against him, they found a way to win. I think Georgia's gonna win. It's gonna be a nail biter. I just think that they're gonna be able to protect Carson. Most of those guys should be back. The
Yeah,
key is
Can Carson Beck have a bad game? I mean, that's the other thing.
right,
He's
right.
been
But I
so
mean, when
good.
you have Ladd and Brock and Dylan and those running backs, I think Bama's front line is good with Dallas Turner. I don't think they're great. you know, in a sense of Bama great. They're great for college football, but they're not Bama great. I think Georgia's going to do enough to get the game. I think they're good enough on defense to kind of slow down that Alabama offense. Expect them to spy Milroe a lot. You know, it doesn't mean they're going to stop him, but I think Georgia squeaks one out. When I say squeak out, it could be like 35-31.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty close to where I've got it pegged too. I got the Dogs too right now. I can't. It's hard for me. It's hard for me to obviously pick against Saban, but you know it's hard picking against Kirby right now in the Dogs. I mean, granted, I mean you think about it, the line's still 6 points.
Yeah.
So they're still almost.
I mean, the key is Carson, right? Long as Carson plays how Carson's been playing all season, and the ball over, it's tough.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. They can have those drives where they don't get anything, and it's just like, okay, Georgia just kind of hangs around, and they're going to get you on the next one. They're going to get you on the next one. They're going to get a stop and get you on the next one. So it's like they've had games where they've had tight ones, obviously against Auburn too. They had a tough game against Auburn on the road early in the year. They had the tough game like week 2 or 3 against Carolina, where they kind of just came out flat, and Carolina came out hot early. I think it's going to be a back and forth game, but I think that, you know, where Georgia is just so efficient, I think, you know, if Milroe doesn't make any mistakes, it's going to be going to be down to the wire.
Yeah, that's going to be the key.
And he's been pretty good at not making the mistakes. And again, the big deal is the fact that Georgia does tend to have struggles, even like Bama. Both Nick and Kirby sometimes have struggles with running quarterbacks. They it's been that's the one guy they can't account for in the run game on defense that they've had. Can
they
trouble with.
When Georgia blitzes, can those defensive ends contain, and can, you know, that rush? Your rush is, from a defensive line perspective, your rush is going to be a lot different because you got to stay in your lanes, and those Georgia defenders can't get out of those lanes, especially if they're blitzing off those corners or up the middle, to just keep them in the pocket as much as they can. Because if those defensive ends crash and he has that open lane on the outside, even if it's 3rd and 3, he's good enough to pick up 3 yards. He's 3rd and 3 could turn into a 50-yard run or a 3-yard run to get the first down. So it's going to be interesting to see how Georgia plays against them. But like you say, playing against Peyton, I'm not comparing Peyton Thorne and Jalen Milroe, but playing enough of those athletic running quarterbacks is going to give them an advantage to say, all right, we've seen this, but he's a bigger, faster, stronger than a Dart, a Thorne, even a Haynes King. Haynes King gave them a couple problems this weekend as a running quarterback. Georgia did. So, but you know, like I say, if it's all hands on deck, if they can have everybody healthy and ready to play, I think Georgia has enough to beat them. You know, because I think on the flip side, Alabama's defense is a little suspect in the secondary, and when you got 3-4 guys that you could get open, that's, you know, I mean, we saw what LSU did to their defense. LSU was able to get up and down. I mean, the difference is they had Jaden Daniels running the ball, but I think the offensive line is good enough to keep those guys out. You know, I expect a lot of zero blitzes. I expect them to try to rush Carson as much as possible.
Yeah, no, and the crazy part about this game too is, statistically speaking, it's good on good. Like both teams are really high at, you know, converting 3rd downs.
Yeah.
They're both good at stopping 3rd downs. They're both good at, you know, run efficiency. You know, both, you know, they're both comparable in the stat line. So it's going to be like, who does it better? You know, who does it's almost like who doesn't make that mistake. And that's where Carson Beck has been pretty damn good all year.
All year.
And, you know, Milroe, if you're trying to compare the two quarterbacks of making those mistakes, he's made a few more. Now he's definitely cleaned up and not made as many. But this is one of those games where when the game is this razor thin of, you know, margin for error, as we like to say, you know, this is where you can't have any of those meltdowns, blunders, mistakes, or anything like that, because it will cost you in a game like this where you have to be really, really good. So I feel like Georgia just has been too consistent, you know, to whereas, yes, Bama has been consistent. Really, Bama's been the most consistent team too, ever since the Texas game. You know,
I mean, since the Texas game.
Yeah, I mean, granted, and they haven't necessarily, you know, mollywopped everybody. Like they beat, you know, they played Ole Miss, you know, earlier in the season where they won by 2 scores. Whereas, Georgia played them a couple weeks ago and, won in a blowout.
Yeah.
Georgia had that tight game, against Missouri, who we think is a good team, to where that was a tight ball game. So if you go back to, okay, Georgia, like you're not playing Florida, who's not very good. You're not playing Vandy. You're not even playing Tennessee, who's not very good. This is a really good team.
I don't think we have to worry about that.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. I'm just saying.
I hope
You're just going to get in the game. We're like, damn, these guys are good too.
This is what I hope for. Somehow, some way, somehow, that Kirby pregame speech leaks.
Yeah, right.
I want to hear that pregame speech.
I know. I need to call somebody and be like, "Who's in the locker room?" Get that thing recorded.
I need to hear that. I mean, I'm sure Nick gives a good one, but the ones I've heard from Kirby, I want to hear pregame speech leak. So you're ready to run through a wall.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Like get ready for this game.
We both like Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm in the same neighborhood as you. I'm thinking like 31-27, 31-28.
I could see that.
33-30, some like field goal. Like I don't know if Georgia covers, but they're close to covering, I think. But I feel like it's like a 3 to 7 point game, somewhere in that neighborhood. And again, I don't think either one of us at all would be surprised if Bama does pull the win
at all.
So then it comes down to, like I say,
only way I think, speaking for you, the only way we would be surprised is if Bama wins and it's like 35 to like 14.
Yeah, Bama up 21. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's where I would be shocked. And then, the whole question then, obviously we got to let some of these other games play out. Like, what do you do with Georgia and Bama in this playoff?
Yep.
Did both SEC teams not get in? Does Georgia not fall all the way out? Does Bama, or does Bama climb in? Those are the hypotheticals that are going to be very interesting, come Sunday, or Saturday night leading into Sunday before they make those selections. But all right, well, we both like the Dogs then, I guess. So the primetime matchup for Friday night football in Vegas, baby. The rematch.
I'm taking
the Oregon Ducks. Taking the under. 66. Well, like I say, this goes to show you where this game's at. Oregon's almost a double-digit favorite. As soon as that game ended, way back when we were talking about it, like week 6 or 7, I told you then if they were to play next week, I'd pick Oregon.
Yeah.
They're playing this weekend. I'm picking Oregon. Washington's done nothing but win games.
Find a way to win, yeah.
But
it's been ugly.
You look at Oregon and where they've trended since then and how they've basically not had any issues. And so it's just where they are now. Bo Nix playing great ball. The offense high flying. I still feel like Oregon was even the better team that day they lost. They just didn't execute some of those 4th down calls. Maybe shouldn't have went for some of those 4th down calls. This time around, I think Oregon handles business. I think they take care of business. Washington, I think, has just been trending downward since then. Had too many close games. And I think, the question is, will Oregon cover that 10? I even think they're going to cover the spread too.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Washington, like you say, that next week after the first game, I told you I would take Washington again. But after these last 6, 7, 8 weeks, there's no way in the world I could take Washington. As much as I love Michael Penix and those receivers, they have somehow regressed. I mean, they found ways to win. I think Oregon's going to go in there, and I think Oregon's going to pretty much just beat them up and just win this game easy. Like I say, I don't know what the disconnect has been since the first Oregon-Washington game. Like that Washington offense just hasn't been clicking. The defense has played better. The defense has had they've been put in some tight situations.
Even the defense kind of hasn't played well. Like you think about it, we say the offense has struggled. They still scored obviously 52 on USC, who everybody's scoring on, but they scored 52 and they put up 35 on Utah. So like the offense, it's kind of the defense is kind of taking it back where they've been.
No, the defense has been struggling. I mean, but you watching the Apple Cup, a little bit of the Apple Cup, I think the offense had plenty of opportunities to score, and they didn't.
That game, they definitely the last
even the Oregon State game.
I was about to say the last 2 games they scored 22 and was in a banger with Oregon State, and they won by a field goal against Wazoo this past weekend. So
I mean, they better hope the weather is terrible to but then again, it still benefits Oregon
in that dome, man.
Oh yeah, it's in Vegas. I forgot. It's at Allegiant. But yeah, I think the problem is for Washington, their defense is not going to slow down Oregon. They didn't really slow them down the first game. It was just the fact that Penix and the boys were just out there just dropping dimes, and Roma Dunze and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan were just balling. But McMillan, I think, is still kind of hurt, even though he's been playing. Polk hasn't really been doing much. I mean, Dunze's still been the guy. He's still been the number one receiver in the country for the most part.
He's been
I
a
mean,
baller still.
yeah. So I just think their offense is not doing enough to win them this game. I think Oregon goes in there and handles business. They're not going to be able to slow down Troy Franklin and Bucky Irvin and the other backs. And Bo Nix is this is a Heisman game for Bo Nix.
Yeah, they
I
said
think
it's down. It says it's literally down to him and Jaden Daniels. That's it.
Yeah. If Bo Nix goes out there and puts up 3-4 touchdowns and they win easy, he won the Heisman. If he struggles, Jaden Daniels, I think Daniels should win the Heisman, regardless of the 3 losses. I mean, those 3 losses are just because they have 0 defense. They have a -10 defense. They're beyond 0. They're -10. And he's the reason why they've won the other 8 games. But if Bo Nix goes out there and has 3-4 touchdown performance and the offense is clicking, he's going to win the Heisman.
Yeah, I would totally agree that it's Bo Nix's to lose unless he just has a abysmal performance, which I don't see happening just because they've been so good.
Yeah.
So it's more so of what does he do? I think he does status quo. I think he throws for 300, has about 3 touchdowns passing, probably has a rushing touchdown, and they beat Oregon or they beat Washington by, 2-3 scores. And I think, like you said,
I think they just have great
easy
weapons. Yeah, they have great weapons that no one talks about with Tez Johnson and Troy Franklin, even their big tight ends. Like I say, I think, and like I say, Bo Nix is just, he's a different cat, man. He's different than what he was at Auburn. And it's kind of good to see, he got out of his dad's shadow and he just went out and blazed his own path for the most part. And like you say, he potentially could win the Heisman.
I texted Justin, last night asking him what his temperature was, Georgia fan playing Alabama. He said he still feels good because Beck's been so good. And then I told him what we'll get into my scenario of what I think is going to happen this weekend and where I think the 4 are going to be and who you're going to play, whatever. And we were both talking about Bo Nix and how good he's played. He's like, I was like, Bo Nix looks good. He's like, yeah. He's like, I would expect that for a guy who's been playing 8 years in college.
It's true though. I mean, he ain't the only one. There's a lot of these dudes, man, that have been in college for 5 to 8 years. Hey, can you blame him if you're making decent money?
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. He's having a good time. He's balling. He's gonna. Hey, obviously we think he's going to win the Heisman because we think he's going to have a good game. So
yeah, he's living his best life out there in the Great Northwest.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right, well, we both like the Ducks in that one, and we'll talk about these 2 quickly before we wrap up with the ACC game. We think Michigan. I don't even think we need to talk about this. Michigan big, right?
Yeah.
Take the under 35.
I could, but then it's funny. I can see Michigan winning 34-0.
I know, right? It could be 34-0, but then it's probably going to be 34-3. It's going to be 34-3,
dude.
I was gonna script their drive, go down and get a field goal, be up 3-0, and then Michigan's gonna win 34-3.
Even if Iowa gets 8 turnovers, some way, somehow, they better hope all 8 turnovers are in their red zone where they can just kick field goals.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
I mean, I guess this is not even the best defense they've seen. I would say Ohio State and Penn State's defense is just good as Iowa's.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I was good at defense and punting.
Yeah, that's what Kirk said the other day. He's like, the punting battle should be pretty good. Iowa might win the punting battle in this game.
Yeah, Michigan big. But you know what? Michigan's not one of those teams that's going to run it up on you. They just want to beat you up.
They did this year. They ran on the bum slayer level. They beat, if the team was not good, they beat the hell out of you.
Yeah, I mean, but what I'm saying is, whereas if this is Georgia Vanderbilt type or Alabama Vanderbilt, they're putting up 50.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the old Nick Saban where if it's 28-0, that's a blowout. That's like they just beat you up and just ran the football, because I could see Michigan running the same power play 10 times in a row in Iowa in the 4th quarter. Just say, let's get this clock moving and get the hell out of here and let's get healthy. So, yeah, we spent way too much time on this game.
I know, right? We already talked about it way too much. And I was actually going to give another score because it reminds me of, even last year's game, Purdue scored 22 on it. It was 43-22. But I see it being about 43-17 47, 42-7.
I can see that. I'm staying away from the over under
Moving
on
on.
this.
Get out of here. Stop talking about it. Michigan sucks anyways. Anyway. The other game, the big noon game, I think this is another. We were looking forward to OU Texas rematch.
Yeah, the rematch.
OU kind of crapped the bed and lost some games where, they could have been in the top 7, 8, 5.
Yeah.
They could have been number 3 or 2 or whatever. If they would have been stayed undefeated. But Oklahoma fell out. They're gone. The Pokes are here, and I think Texas wins with no problem. I don't know if they cover the line. I mean, obviously Oklahoma State can play, but I think the way Texas played last week kind of made a statement. I think Texas wins easily.
This is a defensive line game for Texas. We'll sweat at D tackle and the boys, stop Ollie Gordon. If they can stop Ollie Gordon from getting 150 yards rushing, I think they win. I think Texas is going to win as long as Ewers doesn't turn the ball over like he did in that the OU game. They should be able to win. I mean, they still got C.J. Baxter, A.D. Mitchell, and all those guys. Xavier Worthy, Sanders at tight end. I think they just got too many weapons, but they better not let Ollie Gordon in that running game get going, because then that play action over the top could beat them. But I think Texas is going to win. I could see Texas winning like 31-17.
Yeah. I think Texas handles business. I think they're on a mission to win this game, and I think it's a lot. I think if OU was in this game, they'd win, but it's just different. It would be a different feel to have a Red River 2 in the championship game versus.
But don't come out sleep. Like I say, don't come out sleeping on the Pokes though.
No, for sure. No, they can score, and like I said, if you get the run game going, it can slow down the game and all that stuff. But I think Texas, they've kind of struggled themselves the last couple of weeks, not really looking like how they probably want to look, but they handled business last week and they made a statement and they scored some points. So I think they're on a mission to kind of continue that as well.
Try to backdoor their way in.
Like I say, it'll be interesting to see where things shake out. So speaking of that, the last and final game, the ACC Championship. The Florida State Seminoles with Tate Rodemaker at quarterback. What do they do Friday or Saturday night in Charlotte versus Louisville? Who you got, Faro, and why?
I've been thinking about this one, and I think it's tough to go in with a backup quarterback in big games. I know it's been done. We know you bring up Cardale Jones with Ohio State several years ago, and you're like, well, the third string guy's in, and he just comes out slinging it. In this game, I think the key to Louisville winning this game is they could, even if they come out slow, it's that second half. It's where Florida State has been so dominant all year, is that second half. And I think the Brown boys are just such good play callers, and they're going to scheme this game up. And you're going to see Florida State's going to see a ton of different formations. They're going to see a lot of movement shifts and different things like that, to where they're going to have to be disciplined, because Louisville throws a lot of like back screens and throw it to the tight end on the other side of the field and stuff like that. So they're just going to have to be disciplined as hell on defense. Their defense, like I say, we know their defense is good enough to win this game, but if I'm Louisville, I'm blitzing off the bus once again. I give Rodemaker no time, and I'm telling my corners, you're out there on the island. It's going to be tough guarding Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and Jaheim Bell, but guess what? You guys got to do it. If you're Florida State, you're probably going to hit them with some screens to the tight ends and to the backs. Just because of no JT, I'm leaning Louisville. I gotta go Louisville. I know there's not going to be a lot of happy people to hear that, but Tate hasn't done enough to show me that he could beat a team with an offense. But the key is second half, Louisville is going to have to score points. They're going to have to score. They don't score points, Florida State's going to find a way to win. Right. That's the key to the game. And if Florida State wins, it wouldn't surprise me. And the only reason I'm picking Louisville is Tate Rodemaker has to show me that he could win a big game like this.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you, buddy. I got Louisville. I think Louisville's going to pull off the 2.5.
Is this the Gator fan in you, or is this
this is not the Gator fan being the hater. This is I'll throw a stat out there for you. When was the last, or who is the best offense besides LSU that Florida State has played?
Probably Miami.
Exactly. it's going to be Louisville. Louisville is going to be the second best offense they
Yeah.
played all season. A
Yeah.
team that can score points, a team that can put up numbers, a team that
And
will
run the
kind of.
football.
Yeah, no, that's the other thing.
That's the thing.
Jawar Jordan's got over 1,000 yards on the season. He
Well,
can run the
their
ball.
backup, the other kid
He's
has
got like
been
6. He's good too.
the last 4 or 5 weeks is where he's gotten his yards. So they got that two back system where the only thing where Louisville will struggle at is which Jack Plummer
Yeah.
Jack Plummer is going to show up, because he has times where he looks good and he has times where you're like, how the hell is this kid a starting Division I quarterback?
Yeah, Jack Plummer is the other key to where I think he's been pretty good. He's just he's thrown too many picks,
Yeah.
So he might throw a pick or two in this game. Like
Mhm.
hell, they put it this way: Louisville had 3 turnovers and a turnover on down last week against Kentucky. That led to basically a 7-point line. You think about it, you had 4 turnovers and you still only lost by a
They
touchdown.
still put up 30-something points.
They scored 31. So
Yeah.
Louisville has found ways to move the ball offensively.
Yes.
I think it's going to put, like I say, think about the shootout of a game you guys were in with them.
Yeah.
I feel like Louisville is going to stress this Florida State defense a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
that's more that's coaching.
Exactly.
I think this one's going to be more coaching.
Yeah. No, and here's the thing. The on the flip side of that, I don't respect Tate Rodemaker. Now he's got the weapons, but you got to show me. So
that's the thing.
Playing against the Gators last week, that didn't show me nothing. It showed me that you kind of aren't that good, because it took a while to get things going, and definitely Trey Benson in the run game, they got to get that going again against Louisville.
Big
but
time.
I feel like if you're telling me Louisville's going to score 28, 30 points, I don't think Florida State's going to score that.
And then remember, we glanced over this game a little bit. We thought Ray Davis was going to have a big game, and Ray Davis really didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, he had 50-50. He had some receiving yards until that big run at the end of the game to put it away.
Right.
He only had 50 yards rushing up until that 30-something yard run he had to for the game-winning touchdown.
Right.
So, I mean, I think he ended with like 80 or 90 yards rushing, but majority of the game, they did a pretty good job of Louisville did a pretty good job of slowing it down. Now, with that being said,
he had 76 yards and he had the 37-yarder. So
yeah,
he was right around that 40 to 50-yarder.
Miami was able to run the football against Louisville.
Right.
But the difference in the styles of how Miami runs the football and how Florida State runs the football, Miami's more of a downhill. Our linemen are going to get up to that next level and block those guys, and our backs are going to, find the hole and get up. Whereas Florida State's more of a, we're pulling our guys and letting our running backs kind of get, figure out where the hole is and get downhill. So that, and that's always been my criticism. If you're Louisville, you're shooting those gaps. If you could shoot the right gap and get in the backfield as the ball's being handed off, you can slow down the Florida State running game. And like I said, that's been my biggest criticism of their offensive line and their run game this year is if you have a defensive line to be able to shoot those gaps and linebackers shoot those gaps, you could blow up that Florida State running game, which Florida did a good job of it in the first half.
Exactly, for a while.
And then
what didn't help was the Florida offense, didn't put any pressure on Florida State at all. So when you don't, and that's where I think Louisville needs to have that same mentality to be like, look, we know who Benson is. We've seen him.
Yep.
We need to stop him first and then say Tate Rodemaker has to make throws downfield to Four and Wilson and Jaheim Bell and all those guys. To whereas, yes, you have those weapons, but I got to see him be able to do it.
Now, Now, on the flip side for Florida State, like I say, the defense is going to have to continue being the defense and not get over.
The defense is going to have to win this game, in my opinion.
Yeah,
if they're going to win it.
For sure.
Now, granted, Rodemaker's going to have to make the plays, but if
he's going to make
they got to shut Louisville down, which is in my mind is going to be hard to do.
Yeah, they got to score more than 20, 24 points to win this game. And like you say, the biggest thing is Rodemaker's going to have to show us, can he do it? Can he hit those guys? Can Keon Coleman only had 1 catch for 24 yards last week? Yeah. In the Miami game, Keon Coleman was a non-factor other than punt returns and the big touchdown he had.
Yeah.
So these last couple of weeks, I don't know if it's injury. I still think he's one of the best receivers in the country. I don't know if it's injury or what, but he has to play up to that. I'm the guy and take over this game. And I think those receivers have to step up and help Tate out, a lot. And Mike's going to have to help Tate out a lot and put him in good situations.
No, I totally agree. So, like I say, what's your score prediction then? Where you leaning on score?
I could see Louisville winning by like 28-1. I don't know if Florida State's going to be able to score enough. Like I say, outside of if we take out the factor if they could score a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown, if it's just offensive scoring, can they score more than 21?
Yeah.
Like I say, the defense is going to have to play outside of their mind to win this game. And not saying Louisville's offense is great. I just think they're good enough with their play calling and their coaching put them in good situations to where they just do think they're watching them a couple times. They're just unconventional.
Right.
It's a
No,
pro style, unconventional offense.
it's a good way to put it. And like I say, again, they stress you because they are able to be balanced and have those good running backs. And Plummer, in all intents purposes, is pretty good. Now, granted, he can have bad moments, so he just needs to be good. And obviously, if you make mistakes, you're gonna have to make up for them. And then on the flip side, hope that Louisville's defense can slow down. If put it this way, if Jordan Travis in this game, it's a totally different story. Totally different story.
Yeah,
I'm picking the nose.
Yeah.
This is not the same Florida State team, and like I say, it sucks for all intents and purposes.
Yeah,
and even if put it this way, we'll jump right into the top 10 or whatever here. But going into if even if Jordan Travis is in this game, we both like it. If for some reason, and this is where it gets dicey with everybody talking, if they do somehow beat Louisville, they're undefeated, the ACC champ, and they get in that playoff game, and it's like they're in the playoffs. It's just like this team is just still. I still wouldn't think they're one of the 4 best teams, not without Jordan Travis.
No,
and it's just because I feel like when they have to play one of these upper echelon, high caliber teams, those teams
they probably would play Georgia or Michigan the first game.
And
I mean, Georgia, if Georgia wins, they're playing Georgia first.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not beating Georgia without Jordan Travis.
Exactly. So again, this is where it goes into the whole thing that I sent you where Kirk was on McAfee, and they were talking about deserving and this, that, and the other.
No, I had watched the episode.
So you end up putting, you put a team that's deserving in there. Well, what have we had these last 5 years where these semifinal games, the average margin of victory is 19 points, basically 3 scores, 3 touchdowns, So it's like these games are terrible because it's an absolute blowout. But it's like, hey, you're basically knocking Florida State because they lost their most important player. And like I say, it's like, what do you do? And it's like, it's hard to not knock them, but then it's hard to basically put them in too because they're not the same team, So you've had them at number 2 in your poll. Did you drop them? Where are they at? Like, where's Florida State?
So
really?
Currently my top 10 is going to be Georgia. You got to put Michigan at number 2, regardless of how I feel about Ohio State. They beat the number 3 team in the country.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could easily put them at number 1, but I think Georgia's still the best team in the country. So I got Georgia 1, Michigan 2. I got Florida State 3. And, it's probably, it sucks because I could easily bump them out if they win, if they find a way to win. But I got Florida State 3. I'm still rewarding them on a great season, but that doesn't mean my poll at the end of the year is going to mean that. As of today, I'll put them at 3, UW at 4, Oregon at 5. I got Texas 6, Bama 7, Ohio State 8. And after that, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
After 8, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, see, like I say, I agree with you. It's like, and I'm going to, I'll be the bad guy because I'm the bad guy. Florida State, in my opinion, would be behind all those 1-loss teams. I wouldn't pick them. I wouldn't pick them to be anybody right there. So mine's Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, then Florida State. Then I got Missouri, Penn State. And I'm only doing that because I'm not the committee, and I'm not.
The thing. That's the thing. Like, Florida State fans are going to be mad and think it's personal, and it's like, but I get why you would rank them there. I wouldn't personally.
Yeah, no,
I clearly I didn't.
I know why you're not too, because you're basically saying, hey, they're undefeated. They still win.
But so let's look at it like this. After this weekend, right? If Georgia wins, Michigan wins, and we say Oregon, there goes your top 3. I'm jumping Oregon over Florida State because they just beat a team in my top 5. You got to reward them for that. Then you're sitting there.
Go ahead.
If Florida State wins, right, and if Texas blows out Oklahoma State, I could easily say I'm putting Texas over Florida State, and that's nothing against Florida State as a Miami fan. That's just like you said. I don't want to see Tate Rodemaker in Florida, depending on what it looks like this weekend.
Right.
If it looks like
Tate
Okay,
Rodemaker better Cardell Jones this thing.
yeah, exactly. But if it looks ugly, there's no way in hell I'm putting Florida State at number 4.
Yeah.
And I know people would be like, "Well, you shouldn't
That's what I'm
penalize
saying.
them
You're,
for that."
you're giving them the benefit of the doubt now before they play Louisville, which is
right,
cool.
exactly.
I'm already saying I've already
Yeah,
seen enough. I already know.
I want to see what they do against Louisville.
Yeah,
Now, if they
I do
go out
too.
there and hang 40 against Louisville, it's
Right.
hard to not put them in.
No, that I would totally agree. I would totally agree with that. That's
But
where
even if
wipe the
they
slate
find a
clean.
way, if they find a way to win and it's like 17-16, I'm sitting there like, man, I don't know. I don't know. And like as a, just say everything works the way out this weekend. If Texas wins, I could jump Texas to number 4. Because
right. What happens if
Bama wins?
Yeah.
If Bama wins, obviously Michigan will beat
same scenario right there. All those teams win. It basically will say just like Bama beats Georgia, Michigan wins, Oregon wins, Florida State wins, Texas wins, Alabama wins.
How are we still saying Florida State barely wins?
Yeah, we're saying Florida State wins 20-17. They they're tied and they kick a late field goal to win it.
You know how I am about head-to-head, but if Bama goes into Atlanta and beat Georgia, they're in the top 4.
All right, so basically you got Bama jumping Texas and Florida State
just because of the win. Yeah,
okay, that's what I'm saying.
They beat the number 1 team in the country. How do you?
That's the best win of the. That's the best win of the season for sure.
Yeah, like I get the head-to-head thing, but when you beat the number 1 team in the country, and if they just say if Bama goes in there and hangs 35, 40 on them,
that's where you really wipe the slate clean because that would be
that's when you're like, hey man, they just demolished the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah.
So you have to factor in all of that. Just say if that scenario plays out, Michigan would be 1, Oregon probably would be 2. I would slide Bama and Texas in 3 and 4.
Yeah,
if they all went out.
Right. No,
I'm not putting Ohio State in.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either.
Looking at it right now, it's just hard for me to put a 13-0 Florida State team in with their backup quarterback, depending on what he looks like. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what he looks like this weekend.
Yeah.
If they look good on offense and it's clicking, I'll be like, I'm cool with Florida State going in.
Here's the other caveat question. Like, how hard is it to basically dock and knock Georgia out of the top 4 just because they lost the last week of the season to Bama? And they,
I think it depends on how they lose.
What if it's a tight one? They lose by a game-winning field goal.
If it's a tight one and a game-winning field goal, I could drop.
Record makes a kick and they win it and overtime.
I could drop Georgia to like 3 or 4.
I know that's what's crazy is like
yeah, because there's no way you can tell me that even with a loss, Georgia's still not better than UW,
right?
Ohio State, Texas,
even Oregon, all those teams.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way you can't tell me they're not better than any of those teams. Like I say, if Bama goes in there and dog walks them, that's a different story.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I don't think that scenario plays out, but it's possible.
It's possible. Anything's possible when it comes to football.
Well, here's what I think is going to happen. I'll throw my scenario out there. What I think is going to happen. I think Georgia does win the game, like we said before.
Yeah.
I think Michigan wins, like we said before.
So obviously, they're 1-2. Georgia's 1, Michigan's 2.
I picked Oregon, so that drops
They're
Washington
3.
out. And then I think Louisville is going to beat Florida State. So then I'd put Texas in there. That's basically where I got my top 4. Yeah. So that's my synopsis of pick what I think is going to happen. I think that's going to be your top 4 on Sunday. I think you're going to have Georgia, Texas, Michigan, Oregon.
I'll flip it to you. If Florida State goes in there and dominates and looks impressive, would you put them at 4?
Yeah, I would put them at 4 then.
So this is an audition. This is a playoff audition for Florida State.
Totally. Because here's the thing. They have the parts. We talked about it last week, in the Gator game. They have the part. Like defensively, we know how good they are. They're good. Yeah. The problem right now is this is a whole different offense that makes your whole different team with Rodemaker versus Jordan Travis. If Jordan Travis is in there, I think they smoke Louisville, and I think they're easily in there. Yeah. With Rodemaker in there, I think they lose Saturday, and that drops them out anyways. But if they do find a way to win, it's got to be convincing to where I'm like, okay, damn, he can get the ball to Keon Coleman downfield. He can hit Johnny Wilson. Oh, Trey Benson is running wild all over these guys. Yeah. Now let me see that, and then I'll have a different perspective on Sunday, or Saturday night, But as where I would see it is Texas is going to give you, if Texas is your Big 12 champ and their one loss is to, Oklahoma, and they're all equal parts, this goes back to what's going to give you the best matchups, the best teams.
Mm-hmm.
A Georgia, Texas, that's a hell of a game. I love that game.
Yeah.
A Michigan, Oregon, those are two legit semifinal games where
Yeah.
you're going to be like, hey, who you got? Coin flip. Let's play this
Yeah.
thing out.
Hey, it sucks for Florida State
It
in a
does. It
sense of
does.
you're sitting there trying to figure it out, and you wish that it was next year with the
Right.
12-team format. 12-team format, you're in regardless of
Right.
Jordan Travis, Tate Rodemaker, or Brock Glenn, but it's not, and it should be the four best team. To me, it should be the four best teams, and that's at a whole. I mean,
And
it's to
what
me, it's
sucks
no
is
different than if, just say hypothetically, Oregon squeaks by and beats Washington and Bo Nix gets hurt.
right. Yeah.
You have
That's
to
great.
consider that.
That's a great point.
You have to consider that. Now, depending on the injury, is it an ankle sprain where he has 3-4 weeks to get
Right.
ready, or is he done for the year?
Yeah, he tears
I mean, you
ACLs, he
just
break his ankles, you have a tightrope
you
surgery
have
like
to
Brock
you
Bowers.
have to factor that in. You have to.
No,
That's part of the factor. You have to.
no, for sure. Like I say, that is where, and I guess the problem is
What's the
where
breaking news behind you with Angel? Is that
what do we
Angel
got?
Reese? I just saw breaking news. I
No,
didn't know.
no. Is she playing? Is that what it is? She's rejoining the team.
Oh, that's been a saga in itself.
Yeah, the lady,
Sorry to talk about women's college
lady
basketball.
women's Tigers.
Yeah.
No, yeah, no, the whole thing is, we talk about best and deserving, and this is the bottom line: is the committee the last several years they put the most deserving team in there. They don't put
Yeah.
the four, because this goes back to my big argument last year, which we had, of Alabama was better than TCU, but they had the two losses. They lost those, 2
Mhm.
games to Tennessee, and they lost to LSU on the
I think
last
it was
set.
just hard. It was just hard to put Bama in with 2 losses.
Yeah, I know.
That was the thing for me.
And I get that. It's just I knew they were going to give a better game
For sure.
than TCU.
Yeah.
And granted, TCU had the magical game against Michigan, so it didn't look so horrible. Like, hey, at least they won. But then it showed you the difference when they played against.
I think Georgia was going to do that to other than Ohio
But
State last year. I think
I don't
Georgia
know.
was going to do that to.
I think Bama would have banged with them.
Yeah, that's just a different. That's a different game.
I know. That's
that matchup is just. It's not the same
exactly.
as everyone else.
Put it this way: you go talk to the Georgia fans; they were more than happy to have TCU in there
Oh,
than
I
Georgia
bet.
than Bama.
Yeah, I'm sure Justin was
Yeah, he was
jumping
like,
up and down.
he was like, please don't let them in.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that was when TCU lost to what, K-State right there.
Yeah,
Yeah, on Big 12 Conference Saturday.
that was their only loss of the year.
Yeah,
But
that
it
was
was. But remember, K-State only won like on a last second field goal.
right. No, it
Yeah.
was a last second deal. It was a whole last second deal, and it was like, okay, they basically rewarded TCU on having a great season, and they couldn't put a 2-loss. Again, this was the year we talked, midway through, that I was like, man, can there be chaos or no? The chaos is going to be all these teams pegging
Sitting at
in to be
one
like,
loss.
yeah, like, because like we just said before, Ohio State, they have a gripe to be like, hey, we're like Texas and Bama. We got the one loss, and we lost to the team.
I just feel like for me, I've been saying it all. You know me, like the eye test. The eye test for me with Ohio State just hasn't been. I just don't see it,
and that's fine. And this is what I'm saying by that is, this was going to be one of those hard years that basically, your eye test versus my eye test versus everybody else's eye test is different. So it's like, well, you go by resume and strength of record and all that stuff, and blah 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 blah. But it's like, okay, who's better, who's not, and that's where now you can see this is the final year of this. Where guess what? Next year, Ohio State's in.
Like,
Georgia's in. Alabama's
I'm looking
in.
at the top. I'm looking at the top 25 right now, right? So 8 through 12. Just side note, you got Bama, Missouri, Penn State, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, which would change with championship games and whatnot. Oklahoma sitting there. You know who I would put over Oklahoma at 12?
LSU.
No. Arizona.
Yeah, no, Arizona's the other team, but Would you put LSU?
Even with 3
I
losses,
know,
I would put
but LSU,
Arizona over
LSU's.
Oklahoma.
Would you put Arizona over LSU though?
Yes. And you know how much I've been touting Jaden Daniels in that offense.
I don't
I
know if you can do
think
that. I don't know if you can do that with SEC.
Arizona's been one of the better
No,
teams in the country.
No, they have. They've been phenomenal. And you know, here's a prime example. I know. Again, we talk about the Josh Pate, poll, and it's not. It's basically the algorithm.
I know it's not a science or anything, but
right. Well, he's got Arizona at 15, so they'd be right there close. But it's basically on.
Well, that's where they're at in the poll.
Who would be favored? Yeah. So who would be like he's got Florida State at 14 because they're basically not going to be favored over anybody without Jordan Travis. So his is basically Georgia, Bama. Yeah, they could. Georgia, Bama, Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State is the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
LSU 7th because guess what? LSU, if they played Missouri again, or if they played, Washington or Notre Dame or anyone, they would be favored in that game, and that's true.
Speaking
it's like
of that, this is the 4th time in a while that Saban's been an underdog. I forgot how many years.
No, he's never a dog.
God, think about that.
That's why. Guess what? That's why that's why Bama is number 2 in the poll because they would basically be favored in every single game.
That's nuts.
And he's only a touchdown.
Think about our team. Think about our teams. I don't even think Miami was favored they were probably favored in most of their games this year. But to think that your team hasn't been an underdog but 4 times and just say the last 6 years.
Yeah.
And probably those 4 games are probably all of Georgia.
No, for sure. and they were probably favored in multiple ones of those too.
That's what I'm saying. So you're probably thinking it was probably a Clemson game or an LSU game, or probably LSU game with Burrow and those boys or Georgia, but 4 times?
Yeah, no, that's
God.
That's crazy.
That's what dominance.
That's going back to kind of like James Franklin. He's never favored to win, and he doesn't win. So the big game
still has a job.
Exactly. What I mean by that is he's never favored in the big games. He's never predicted to win, and they don't win them either. So it's like it's that whole double-edged sword of he just wins the games he's supposed to in a sense, And like I say, that'll get you fired eventually, because the boosters get tired of it. But I think in the new format, it'll get more interesting because you'll have more room to get in and maybe make some noise and be a hot team like at Arizona, like at LSU. Again, I don't think a lot of these teams would want to play. You think Florida State would want to play LSU again this weekend? If you're in a tournament and Florida State gets in, you get LSU again this time around with
you might be able to score. You might score a couple points, but that I know we're going long today.
Yeah,
but what that LSU offense has done this year is crazy. It's nuts, like how efficient Daniels has been and how bad their defense has been to put them in the back. Just think about it. If they would have had, who did they lose to this year? They lost to Bama,
and they lost to I forget
the Ole Miss or
they lost that shootout game to Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. If they win that, if they win that Ole Miss game, they're possibly in the mix of this conversation.
Right. Yeah, they're probably.
Their defense is just bad, but yeah. But they're not a team you want to play.
No, definitely not. And like I say, that's the thing with where this playoff next year will be great because a team like them who can score, no matter how bad your defense is, they're going to get into a shootout and they're going to be able to score and they're going to get an upset and they're going to go play, a top team and then maybe get another upset. And all of a sudden you're like, damn, this team's in the Final Four. They're in the national championship game. They might not win it all. They might not win it all, but they can make enough noise and, be 13th or 12th and get all the way to the title game, but
I'm looking on McAfee. They got Bobby Carpenter on there, and he's doing his top 10. He has Oregon at 6. That tells me he's going to have Ohio State at 4 or 5.
Oh, he's going to have 5 for sure. But here's the thing. This is what I was going back to telling you and looking at resumes and stuff. And it's like, it's hard to fathom just because Oregon's been so good. Yeah. That's probably has. Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Florida State.
So this is how I look at it. Once again, I'm back to Ohio State. Like
The Buckeyes, baby.
you can't keep telling me how good you are when you struggle against teams in your conference. It's kind of like you could almost say like we'll say Florida State, right? We'll take Florida State in the ACC,
which is just as bad, in my opinion, as
right. They struggled. They struggled against Boston College, and they struggled against Clemson, which Clemson has kind of turned it on end of the year to kind of help it out.
They're 8-4 now.
But for the most part, Florida State went in and handled business in every game. I don't care who you are. Every team's going to have a game or two where they struggle. Because I can sit here and say that about Georgia, right? But when I look at Ohio State, none of the games surprise me where I'm just sitting there like, yeah, there they go again, looking trash. Yeah. Okay. Here we go again. You know what I'm saying? Like, Big Ten's just bad.
No, it is. I mean, it is. And, you look at, here's a prime example. I'll throw it out here. We talk about the best teams. We'll go with the ACC right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Florida State didn't play NC State this year, who's 9-3 on one of their better years. They didn't play North Carolina this year, who's 8-4 on one of their better years. They are going to play Louisville. They didn't have them on the schedule, but that's who they're going to play this weekend. And they didn't play Georgia Tech, who's 6-6. They played Clemson, who's 8-4. They played Duke, who's 7-5. They played you guys, who's 7-5. Boston College, 6-6. Syracuse, 6-6.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up.
Pitt,
you know which conference
they played. Literally, they played. Here's what's crazy: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They played all the bottom team. Florida State beat the bottom 7 teams of the ACC.
So, which conference has the most teams in bowl games this year?
Is it Florida? Is it the ACC?
The ACC.
ACC, baby. Just
11, 11 of their 14 teams are in a bowl game. Not saying that means anything, but hey.
Yeah, so Ohio State, you basically have the big 3.
Mm-hmm.
Then obviously Maryland was just 7-5, not very good. Rutgers 6-6. Then you had Michigan State and Indiana, who weren't very good. In Iowa, who Ohio State didn't play them either. They're 10-2. Then you had your Northwestern and Wisconsin, who went 7-5, and then the rest of that side, who they beat up on, like the Purdue, Illinois, and Minnesotas of the world, were 4-8 and 5-7.
Yeah,
so. How many did they get in the bowl game? 1, 2, 3.
I think 6 or 7.
6, 7, 8. They got 8.
8. So he has Florida State. He has Oregon 6, Ohio State 5, Florida State 4, UW 3. Obviously, 1 and 2 would be a combination of Michigan, Georgia.
I'm sure he's got Georgia 1. But yeah, no.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he put Michigan 1 just because they beat Ohio State.
Nah, he's not an Ohio State guy. That'd be like me. No way.
Yeah, true.
I put Michigan at 20.
Yep. It was a fun one. Hopefully next week we'll come back and recap this and talk about the great Army-Navy game.
Yeah, we can do that, and we can maybe we can get on
I was
early.
Expecting you to say no.
Yeah.
I really was expecting you to say no on the Army-Navy.
I mean, I'm really not planning on it, but I was just letting you get.
I mean, I guess we could do like a recap of the seasons for the big 3.
We definitely need to talk about these games that are going to happen this weekend, and do we agree? Do we agree with who gets slotted in, who gets slotted out? You know? So definitely we'll be back.
I told you had Michigan number 1.
Interesting.
Yeah,
you can't go back to Ohio State with that crap.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a Big Ten. He's a Big Tenner.
Yep.
Big Tenner. Your favorite kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But like I say, long one today, but we had, this is the end of the season. So, there's a lot to talk about who's going to go where. We had to do a little portal talk, a little coaching carousel, blah, blah. We had a lot to talk about.
We really didn't even touch on the coaching carousel.
We really didn't. I mean, the carousel is not really going that much. I mean, Mike Elko to A&M,
we'll talk about it next week.
A lot of Texas A&M people like that move, but I like it too.
I mean, I knew he was not going to be at Duke next year.
Right.
He's a good coach, man.
Yeah.
How about our favorite coach back at OC of Arkansas?
That's a pretty funny story.
Hide your Harleys.
Somebody said he needs to ride on a motorcycle like the Oregon guy on the first game.
That'd be dope.
Wear the neck brace and all.
That'd be dope. Yeah, we'll talk about that next
No,
week.
no
Since this is the
volleyball
end of it.
staffers, man. No volleyball
Yeah.
staffers. But yeah, no, appreciate everyone hanging in, listening to
Yep.
us. The season is pretty much done, Rapso. This is it for the final regular season week. You had that. This is the conference championship week. It's all over with. So who's going to the playoff? We'll see. Enjoy these games
We'll
this
see.
weekend. Appreciate all the likes, subscribes, listeners, followers, the 39 of you that we've got subscribed. Give us some more love.
I appreciate every last one of you.
I appreciate you.
Especially if you made it to this end. Thank you.
Exactly. I was trying to go 2 hours, but we'll cut it off at 1:55. But anyway, all right, my peoples. Appreciate y'all and enjoy college football's final weekend, baby.